abfraction and repair of gum line abfraction. There is some controversy out there about whether abfraction is caused by clenching of the teeth or something else. Well, I'm going to produce a Dental Minute video soon on that will prove to you that abfraction is from clenching. The way we know that is I've got all these videos, all these photos of porcelain veneers or porcelain crowns that are fractured right here in the abfraction area, in the gingival 1/4 of the tooth. How in the world are you going to fracture that part of veneer if it's not from clenching? And I've got many, many cases of this occurring. So today we're going to talk about repair of an abfracted area with composite resin. So this patient was a big clencher, and you can see these areas right here, and abfraction occurs when the patient clenches their teeth. It's not as much grinding of the teeth as clenching. And the root of the tooth is held by bone, but the coronal part of the tooth flexes, just like you're breaking a paper clip. And when it flexes, this is the flex point. And so they're actually blasting the enamel off the side of the tooth when they clench their teeth and they flex it. So if you repair this and the patient continues to clench during the day or brucks during the night and they don't have a night guard, guess what's going to happen? This is going to recur. So you better talk to your patient about it before you place these composite resins, because they can do the same thing to the composites on the facial gingival of the teeth that they did to the tooth structure. So what do I tell the patient if they've been doing this? Number one, a night guard is a must. If they're not going to wear a night guard, I say don't waste time repairing these areas, because you're going to do it again unless you've stopped bruxing your teeth. The other thing I tell them to do is hum during the day if we feel like they clench during the day. Now, I say if you're with a group of people, though, don't make the sound. Just take a deep breath, put your lips together and go, hmm. And that puts your teeth in the perfect position, which is lips together, teeth apart. Remember, the only time teeth should touch is when you swallow, and then very lightly. Teeth shouldn't touch when you chew your food, and certainly they shouldn't touch as you go through the day or at night when you're sleeping. So a night guard, and tell the patient as they go through the day, while they're conditioning themselves for lips together, teeth apart, hum, just hmm. That also relaxes all the muscles of the neck and shoulders. So this is the before and after, and let's talk about how we did it. So this is a coarse Brasileir round-ended diamond, and I'm just barely removing just a little bit, just roughening the surface of the abfracted area. Not much reduction at all, just maybe 1/4 millimeter, just to create a fresh surface. It's kind of like you're sticking two dirty boards together. You want to remove some of the surface so you've got a clean surface to stick together, and that's what we're doing here. Just lightly roughening that surface, and it also cleans it. Now, this is isopropyl alcohol on a cotton ball. I'm isolating the mouth with 2x2s, and I'm just scrubbing this to be sure it's really clean. Now you don't have to rinse off the isopropyl alcohol if you don't want to. And now I'm etching with 38% phosphoric acid. Remember, if you're in dentin, you only etch the dentin for 15 seconds. Enamel you can etch as long as you want to. So if you have enamel and dentin, put it on the enamel first and etch for about 15-30 seconds, and then put it on the dentin. Leave it on the enamel, but put it on the dentin for that last 15 seconds. Now I like to irrigate this with a bulb water bottle with a fairly large tip. Why? If you use your air water syringe, it's so powerful you may elicit some bleeding, and so this just rinses it off, and I'll rinse it for about 20 seconds. Now I'm leaving the teeth wet. I'm not drying any of the water off the teeth, because remember, you create a hybrid layer in the dentin when you apply primer adhesive, the primer chases the water down into the dentinal tubules. If you've completely dried out the tooth with the newer materials, you'll still get somewhat of a hybrid layer, but you'll get a longer and stronger hybrid layer in the dentin if you leave it wet. And you say, well, will that contaminate the bond if it's soppy wet? No, this little pledget will remove any of the excess water. So you know those dentinal tubules are completely hydrated. And this carrier, which is either acetone or alcohol, will shoot down into the dentinal tubules and it'll carry the primer in there with it. So you've got a really strong bond to dentin if you're in dentin. So I'm placing this copiously, and then it's very important that you dry off the excess, that you blow off the excess. And I'm just putting this 2x2 right on top of the restored area to be restored, and blowing all the excess primer adhesive off so that nothing wiggles when I'm through blowing it off. Why do you want to blow it off? If you don't, the acetone or alcohol is still in the primer adhesive and it could weaken the bond strength. So be sure you blow everything off. There's still plenty on there for adhesion. So nothing wiggles, and keep it isolated. You can use a rubber dam, but this is a tough area to place a rubber dam, especially if this is the most distal tooth. We could place one here, but you've got to push the rubber dam down since the restorations are in the facial gingival part of the tooth. I use rubber dams for extractions and almost everything, but I don't use them here just because it's so difficult. I'd rather place lots of 2x2s in the mouth and isolate it with 2x2s. And the procedure doesn't take that long. Then always cure the primer, the blown off primer adhesive prior to placing the filled resin. Always cure the primer adhesive prior to placing the filled resin, and you will eliminate tooth sensitivity. So I'm curing these about 5 seconds apiece, and this is flowable composite. And I'm flowing it into the lesions, into the areas to be restored, and be sure you keep the tip in the flowing filled resin so you don't incorporate air bubbles. And there'll be a little overbuilding with the flowable composite. So I'm going to come back and polish it. Then I'm going to cure each one appropriately. Now, you know, there's some discussion on how long should you cure each one of these. Well, I cure a porcelain veneer that's been cemented 60 seconds on both sides with 2 curing lights. I'll cure these composite resins 40 seconds, just because you can't overcure, but you might undercure. This way, I know that they're completely cured. So for a direct composite resin, I'm going to cure for 40 seconds. Then I'm coming back with this fine, small, flame-shaped diamond, and I'm polishing the restoration. I'm removing the excess material by polishing the restoration. Remember, you don't want to dig in one direction of the handpiece. The burr will dig into whatever you're prepping or polishing. The other direction, it flows. So it depends on the direction of the burr is turning. But you want it in the flowing, polishing direction, not the digging direction. If you etch dentin more than 15 seconds, the dentinal tubules will collapse, and they'll fold in on each other, and you'll get no hybrid layer. Okay, so I'm polishing the excess composite. You want to be able to move your explorer from the tooth to the composite with your eyes closed and not feel anything. See, I'm going away from the dig or the gouge area. I'm flowing. So what would that mean? The burr would be turning. If I'm going this way, the burr would probably be turning that way. It doesn't hang, it doesn't dig in, it just flows along. Very light pressure, lots of water. Then I'm going to come back in a minute with this Brasileir 12 fluted burr. That's what I'm doing here, and that puts the fine polish on the margins. Very light pressure, lots of water. This is the Shofu Soft Flux Finishing and Polishing Disc. Now when you're using this, you want to be sure that it's turning this way from the composite to the tooth. I'm not trying to polish the gingival margin with this. I'm just polishing the coronal part of the restoration with the disc. Now you're going to change the direction of the disc when you go from distal to mesial, and I want it turning this way so that the disc is turning from the composite to the tooth. In other words, it's burnishing it in. I don't want it turning this way from the tooth to the composite, because you won't polish that. I want to polish those margins. Then this is just composite polishing paste on a Profi cup, and I always dip it in water just to make it a little less viscous, a little smoother. So this is the material, the polishing paste dipped in water, and I want to keep it wet and very light pressure, very light pressure. Just keep it wet. Don't dig in. You can actually scar the composite just a little bit if you dig in too hard with that Profi cup. Now this is my Explorer, and I'm taking the tip of the Explorer from the tooth to the composite to ensure that I can't feel a margin. If there's any bleeding, you can just put some hemostatic agent on a cotton ball and let it sit for a minute. So this one the patient returns about a week later.